Welcome to How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. We're here to chat about humane leadership in a way that's real and relatable, tackling work-life challenges and offering practical advice to navigate tough decisions. Whether you're leading a team or navigating your own career, we've got you covered. I'm Chris Olerking, a Fortune 100 IT leader, and with me is Roberto Torres, a startup engineering leader. We'll dive into real-world stuff, share experiences, and offer guidance on leading with compassion while keeping your career on track. Today, we're going to discuss how humane leaders handle the philosophy of perfection is the enemy of done, and also a bit about he who chases two rabbits catches neither. Good morning, Roberto. How are you doing?
Good morning, Chris. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing great. And we're going to be a bit philosophical today, huh? We're going to share deep wisdom with our topics today.
Yes, indeed. That's something that is not new, but we're going to be putting on our philosophy mask.
Yes, yes. Um, I'd like to, we're going to talk about perfect is the enemy of done, and chasing, if you're chasing two rabbits, you catch neither. Meaning, if you work on too many things, you don't get anything finished. So I'd like to start with that one first, just from personal experience in my 35 years of something that resurfaced multiple times in that 35 years across multiple different changes in our leadership teams. Gosh, I can't even remember. Over that 35 years, I think we had probably 15 different CIOs, believe it or not. The
Well,
average tenure sometimes was a long-term CIO was 3 years. Sometimes they were as short as a year and a half. And when you would have that happen, you would get into these um, cycles of having way too many active projects. And we would have to cycle back to, hey, you know what? We've got like 20 projects going on at once that are all number one priority. And of course, the new CIO would, well, we need to reprioritize things, right? So we were halfway done with some projects. New CIO comes in. Now you got to reprioritize everything. Everybody loses their momentum, and you got to start something new as the number one priority. And the one thing we learned out of that I learned and tried to always convey is really you can really only actively do 5 projects. At least in my company, in our situation, if you went to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you spent too much time cycling and coming back up to speed on so many different projects that you didn't get anything done. It had nothing to do with perfection. You were time cycling. It just took so much time to get back up to speed to be productive that if you're time switching between 10 things, it just doesn't work.
yeah.
Instead, setting 5 priorities and doing your best to rank them 1 to 5. I know all the bosses that are out there, those bosses are going to say they're all number one priority. Well, the practical reality is if you don't set the priority, your employees will, and it may not be what you'd like. So, be formal about it. What are number one priority? You're always working on that. If you get stuck on that and you're waiting for another team to deliver something, then you move to the number 2 project. If that one you've done everything you could, but now you're waiting on another team there, you move to number 3. And through my experience, you rarely got to the 5th project. In other words, you were always able to stay within that first 1, 2, or 3. Maybe occasionally, even in as big a company as I was at, you usually would not get to the 4th and 5th until you finished number 1 and the whole stack moved up in priority.
Yeah, indeed. And the problem is that bosses misuses this word, urgent. This
Yeah.
is urgent. All these projects are urgent. This one. So instead of having 5, you had 8, 10, 12, 15, and suddenly you're on the brink of madness because you cannot withhold all those projects, all that information, all that communication, all different methods of conveying the information to the stakeholders. So yes, it's totally understandable. And the thing is, it is understandable for a boss. No, it is not understandable for us who have to deliver those projects. And the thing is, when you misuse urgent, you lose perspective of what has to be done. That's why uh, you have to talk with your leader, with your boss, and say, okay, tell me what is urgent and what is important, because those words, those two words are different. It has a different weight. When you ask, so what is urgent and what is important, it has a different meaning, and you could uh, get a better balance of what has to be done. There is a an image that it's that I shared with my son last week that says if there is something that is important and it is urgent, you have to do it right now. But if there is something that is important but it's not urgent, you could plan it to do it later. If there is something that is not important but is urgent, you could delegate it. But if you have something that is not important, it is not urgent, finish it later. And the problem with the bosses is that everything is urgent. No, no, no. No way, Jose. That is not great.
Yep. And unfortunately, depending on where you are in that food chain of the leadership team, they seem to forget those things. And we've throughout my career, we had formal project management priorities, and the projects had official titles. They got ranked by the business and IT leadership for prioritization, and pretty much the minute after those meetings and discussions were completed and the priority list was published, it was worthless, because somebody else would be jumping the queue and telling them, I appreciate what this list of projects is, but mine's more urgent and more important.
Yeah.
So, and you'd get into that kind of political thing. So my my recommendation is if you're not the humane leader and you're the person who's being subjected to this kind of unofficial prioritization, you have to do your best to understand what the official prioritization is and what is your political risk of following the formal list versus the informal list. And I don't have exact metrics that you can apply to it, but I'm sure about the hierarchy of the organization, et cetera. So depending on how your organization is structured, if the senior vice president comes down to you and stops in your office and tells you this is your number one priority, it probably is. If the junior senior manager comes and tells you that, then it's probably not. So you do have to do some political navigation, but in general, if there is a formal structure, follow that. But realize, even though there may be 10 number one priorities, if your boss right above, your humane leader right above you can't prioritize, you're going to have to do your best to pick which one of the 5 you're truly going to make your number one and work the hardest on that. And only when you come to a point you can't move forward on that one, do you move to number 2. And as long as you keep that list, maybe it's not official because you don't want it publicized to anybody because it might upset that senior vice president or that senior manager, depending, again, politics, got to deal with it. But, that will help your productivity, which will then get you to that argument of perfect is the enemy of done. Because that's the other thing is many of us are perfectionists. And the reality is perfection is an elusive and false god. So your idea of perfection is not my idea of perfection. So how could it ever be perfect? Instead, realize that, to get that last 10% of perfection might take 50% of the effort. And it's going to delay you from making progress on your number 2 and number 3 projects. So, we have to try and do our best to judge, is getting it done more important than whatever perfect is? and there's always going to be iterations of improvements, certainly for those who are using different project management techniques about being agile, right? There's continuous improvement. Certainly the perfection is going to be the enemy of done in any kind of project management philosophy like that, where there's cyclical changes. So, try and make it really good enough, do a solid effort, but then put it forward to get people's opinions on whether they consider it good enough or done, because you'll get a lot more done. And instead of only completing those top 5 projects for the year, you'll be able to get those 5 done and have 5 more that you're moving forward. And overall, you'll be much more successful in your career with many things that are done, but only 80% of the perfection you were hoping for.
Yeah, and well, there are two things that impacts having too many projects. First one is quality, and uh, we are all humans, so there is no way that we can maintain or get to the highest bar of quality if we have multiple projects, because we have to be focused on one, maybe end it and get to the second one. But if we have multiple priorities, our brain says, okay, which one is the first one and the second one? We go to our leader, to our boss. They say, okay, you have to go with this one. But when you switch your mind from one project to the other one, it might not have the same constraints, or it might not have the same features. So quality might crumble. That is the first one. And I think the most important is we're getting into burnout. You know,
Oh, yes, yes.
having too many projects, it it depletes the energy that we have, and we feel we are on the brink of having a burnout. And when we reach that specific point, there's no way that we think thoroughly. There's no way that uh, we try to strive our best, but there is no way that we're going to reach. It's like you mentioned in the title, he who chases 2 rabbits catches neither, because you don't know what to do. Am I going to the first rabbit or the second one? When you go to the first one and you don't catch it, you try to go to the second one, but neither. So it's it is not a win-win situation. It's a lose-lose situation over here.
Absolutely. And both of us worked in fairly technical subject areas. So there's a lot of lost productivity to refocus your mind on different technical issues. So if if the 5 projects that are the priorities are significantly different from each other, it does take a person a fair amount of time to kind of get back up to speed, back aware of the technical aspects of everything, to be then again move the project forward. So if you're spending a lot of time switching between those tasks, you're putting most of your time into re-engaging your brain into the technical details before you actually make productive progress. So by cycling through 10, you make no progress because it took you so long to get back up to speed to start making progress. And now something changes and you need to work on the other project. You literally spent your entire day coming up to speed on multiple things and moved none of them forward. It was very common when we got into those cycles of having 20 active projects per person. It was just crazy.
Yes, indeed. That's why I totally concur with what you first told us, is going with 5 projects. And it's not about sticking, it's about showing to the leadership team that if we have more projects, the quality, the results uh, won't get the ones that we had to get. That the credibility, not only of the team, but of the department, will lose down, because people get to that goal. So we have to make them understand. Let me tell you that once I was at a CDO interview in a startup, and one of the questions that that panel gave me was, "What is the maximum number of projects that you could handle?" And I answered, "Well, with a good team and good processes, maybe three or four." And I had to have we should be agile and have fast, hastily iterations. And they said, "Oh no, we're looking for something else." And I asked, "How many projects did the previous CTO handle?" "Oh, he could handle 10, 12. Where is he right now?" "He is burned out and he quit 2 weeks ago." So there is this thing about saying maybe wearing a hero cape, cape.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, a
Yeah.
hero
Hero's
cape.
Cape. Yep.
Yeah, a
Superman.
hero. Thank you. Yeah, hero cape saying I could handle everything. I'm going to fly and I'm going to do. No, you have to understand the limit. And if there is a bad processes that withholds this, that there is the foundation of the company. Well, no, nobody new who's going to the company is going to fix that. It's going to be an ongoing process until there is a difficulty about that.
Without a doubt. And really, your overall throughput of your whole team and yourself personally, even, right, is going to be impacted by these two different philosophies: chasing too many things at once and just striving for true perfection, right? There is quality can go up, but then it takes more time. And so, when you try and make it perfect and juggle too many things, your actual forecasting for how long it's going to take you to do everything also gets way more inaccurate. It's wrong by so much more when you're cycling through 10 things versus 5. Your accuracy of predicting when you're going to finish just will be terrible. And if there's one thing that business people don't like is a bad prediction on time of completion. Hey, Roberto, I'm going to get you this project and you will absolutely be able to be using it for the Christmas shopping season. Oops, I didn't tell you what year. I meant for Christmas 2026, a year from now. That's not what I needed, right? So if you can, demonstrate to your company that, look, if we do things and get them close enough to be active, moved into production, if we get things, chase fewer things at once, at most 5 projects, we will get more things into production, and we will actually, over the course of the year, we will have more things done. I appreciate they won't be perfect. Perfect is the enemy of done. I appreciate you won't have 80 projects done. You'll have 10. But that's because you focused on 5, and when you finished one of those, you added one more in, and you got them done. I think you'll find out that a lot of the leaders that fail said, "Yeah, I could have 80 projects going." Sure, you could. How many did you finish? Well, none of them. None of them got
Yeah.
done. Okay, well, then the business got no value. Even though you moved 80 projects 5% forward, nothing got done. Therefore, none of those projects provided any value.
Yeah. And all that time spent, all that money, all those resources that could have been to something that could be done, it's totally a waste of everything, actually. And that is something that we had to avoid. But I think the most important thing is to train, not train, to teach our leaders, our bosses about this, because everything, as you mentioned, is being done by in promises. I promise this, I promise this, I promise that. You have to deliver. Well, try to do good promises, not political ones.
Absolutely. I mean, the bottom line is if I'm either an individual contributor or I'm trying to be a humane leader, if I finish, I'm done with 5 things at the end of the year that are now in production and done. That is infinite more business value than 25 or 100 things halfway done,
Yeah,
because the business didn't get any value out of halfway done.
yeah. That's why it says technical debt. You can increase technical debt, but that is something for other podcast.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, it was a great episode. Thank you, Chris, and I think I'll see you next time.
I'll see you next time. Take care, Roberto.